After 3 years of silence, I found a letter from my daughter on my doorstep, and my whole body started shaking with happiness. I was ready to rip it open when my neighbor, Mrs. Chin, yelled, "Wait." I asked, "What's the matter?" She pointed with her finger and said quietly, "Look at the stamp." I looked closer, and what I saw made me feel sick. Before we continue, please subscribe to Vibes of Stories and write in the comments what your favorite color is. My feet felt heavy as I walked to my front door. Something about the yellow envelope under my doormat made my heart beat fast before I even saw who wrote it. 3 years of no letters had taught me not to get excited, but there it was. Sarah's neat writing spelling out my name. March 15th, her graduation day from college. How could I not remember? I held the envelope up to the morning sun, looking at the pretty curves of her letters. The address showed her dorm room, the same place where our big fight happened. My stomach felt tight with hopes I'd buried deep down. "Betty," I called, walking through my front yard. "Betty, come here fast." My voice shook with joy I hadn't felt in forever. The gate squeaked as I pushed through it, still holding the envelope like it was made of gold. "What's all the yelling about?" Betty came from her garden, dirt on her gloves. Her brown eyes found the letter in my hands right away. "Look at this." I held it up, watching her face change from confused to surprised. "It's from Sarah. Today of all days." Betty walked closer, cleaning her glasses. "That's her writing for sure." She touched my shoulder softly. "Are you ready for this, Mike?" I turned the envelope around in my hands, feeling how light it was. Not thick enough for many pages, but real. Real. After 3 years of silence, my daughter had written to me on her college graduation day. "I keep thinking this might be the one," I whispered. "Maybe she's ready to forgive me." The morning sun came through the trees, making everything look golden. Around us, people were walking their dogs, kids riding bikes, the world moving like always. But right here, time had stopped. Betty sat on my porch steps next to me, warm and kind. "Whatever it says, we'll face it together." I nodded, even though my throat felt dry. 3 years of wishing, of trying to call, of staying awake wondering if I'd been too mean, too angry. 3 years of missing my daughter's smile. Her funny jokes, the way she used to text me pictures of her breakfast every morning. The envelope felt heavier now, full of possibilities. Maybe she wanted to make up, maybe she forgave me, maybe even wanted me to come to her graduation, or maybe it was another angry letter, another way to push me away. I put it carefully on the step between us. Too scared to open it, too scared not to. The quiet went on until I could hear birds singing in Betty's apple tree. "She remembered I'd be thinking of her today," I said finally. Betty's hand found mine. She was always good at remembering special days. The memory hit me then, fast and painful. Not of bad times, but of graduation day, when Sarah was in high school, running across the stage in her cap and gown, looking for me in the crowd. Before college, before Marcus, before everything went wrong. I picked up the envelope again, looking at the careful way she'd written my address. No messy parts, no crossed-out words. She'd been careful with this, planned it. That had to mean something good. "I can't remember the last time I felt this nervous," I said. "March 15th, 2019, Betty said quietly. "The day you decided to drive to her college and try to talk to her about that boy." The heavy feeling of that memory settled on me like a dark cloud. That awful day that broke everything between us. But maybe today would be different. Maybe this letter would finally fix what was broken between us. I took a deep breath and got ready to open the envelope that might have my daughter's words of forgiveness inside. I sat down on my kitchen stool, the envelope still closed in my hands. The weight of it brought back memories, taking me back to that cold day 3 years ago when everything fell apart. I remembered standing outside Sarah's dorm building, my finger over the buzzer. The college campus was busy around me. Students hurrying to class, friends laughing together. The energy of a place full of young people. I'd driven their feelings so sure, believing I could make her understand about Marcus. The dorm let me up without asking questions. When Sarah opened her door, she looked tired in a way that scared me. Dark bags under her eyes, her usually bright smile nowhere to be found. Dad, what are you doing here? We need to talk, sweetheart, about your boyfriend. Her face got hard right away. If this is about Marcus again, it is about Marcus and about you making a huge mistake. She stepped back, but didn't ask me to come in. I'm 21 years old. I don't need dating advice from my father. When your boyfriend is stealing your college money, you need advice from someone who loves you. That's when Marcus came up behind her, his arm around her waist. Seeing him made me feel angry. Too smooth, too fake, the kind of person who could trick you into giving him your last penny. Mike, he said with a fake smile, what brings you here? I'm talking to my daughter about the bank statements I found in your backpack last week. Sarah's face went white. You were going through our stuff. I was helping you carry groceries and papers fell out of your bag. $800 gone in one day, Sarah. How many times has this happened? Marcus's fake smile slipped for just a moment, showing something mean underneath. That was for textbooks. School supplies. Don't lie to me, boy. I know the difference between school stuff and someone taking money. This is my life, Sarah shouted. My relationship, my choices. When are you going to stop treating me like a baby? When you stop acting like one. This guy is ruining your future. Probably already spent all your savings. You don't know anything. But I could see in her eyes that I was right. The way she wouldn't look at me, the way her shoulders got stiff, the way Marcus held her tighter like he owned her. What about family, Sarah? Doesn't that matter to you anymore? Family? She laughed in a mean way. You mean the family that never liked my choices? That questioned everything I did? We questioned this because we love you. No, you questioned it because you want to control me forever. Marcus stepped closer then, his voice smooth like honey. Maybe it's time for some distance, Mike. Let Sarah make her own choices without people bothering her. The way he said it was so sneaky, so practiced. I watched my daughter's face as she listened to him. Saw her building walls I'd never be able to climb. He's right, Dad. I think you should go. The words hit me like punches. Sarah, please just listen to what I'm saying. I'm listening, and I'm choosing my boyfriend over your worry. The door closed in my face with a quiet sound that felt like thunder. I stood there for a long time, hoping she'd change her mind, hoping the door would open again. It never did. Now sitting in my kitchen 3 years later, I could still feel how much that hurt. The drive home had been the worst of my life. That closed door led me to remember everything that happened next. 3 years of trying so hard to fix things that seemed to get worse every month. I'd started calling the next morning, then every day after that. Voice messages that nobody answered, text messages that she read but never replied to. Betty watched me walk around our kitchen, holding the phone to my ear, listening to Sarah's voice on her voicemail over and over. Hi, sweetheart. It's Dad. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about yesterday. Maybe we could get ice cream and talk about things. Call me back. She never did. By April, Marcus started answering her phone. She doesn't want to talk to you, Mike. Let me hear that from her. You heard it when you came to her school uninvited and made her upset. Leave us alone. The phone went quiet. I tried going to her college twice in May. The first time Marcus met me at the front desk, his expensive clothes making my work shirt feel cheap. This has got to stop, he said, standing in front of the elevator. You're making her stressed. I'm making her stressed. What about what you're doing to her bank account? His smile stayed the same, but his eyes got mean. Be careful, old man. Bothering people is against the law. The second visit was worse. He met me at my truck before I even got to the building. I warned you, he said, taking out his phone. One more visit, and I'm calling the police. Sarah doesn't want to see you. Summer was the hardest part. I'd always been the one to pick out Sarah's gifts, spending weeks finding just the right thing. That year, I picked a beautiful art set, the kind she'd loved since she was little, with her name painted on the box. It came back unopened, returned to sender written across the package in red letters. My birthday cards came back the same way. Father's Day gifts returned. Every try at talking bounced back like I was throwing rocks at a brick wall. The last try happened this winter. I'd heard from my friend Joe that Sarah's college was having a job fair downtown. I took a day off work and waited in the big room, hoping to see her during lunch. When she walked by, talking with other students toward the door, my heart almost stopped. She looked skinnier, tired, but still beautiful. Still my little girl. Sarah, she turned, and for just a second, I saw something like sadness in her face. Then it went cold. Dad, you can't be here. Just 5 minutes, please. We used to be able to talk about everything. Her friends had stopped, feeling the tension. She stepped closer, talking quietly. Marcus will be so angry if he finds out you were here. Then don't tell him. This is between us. Nothing is just between us anymore. Her voice cracked a little. I made my choice. You can change your mind. She shook her head, and I saw tears starting. It's too late for that. She walked away without looking back, leaving me standing in a college building, surrounded by strangers who tried not to stare. That night I told Betty I was done trying. Some bridges, once broken, couldn't be fixed. But sitting here now holding this surprise letter, I felt that old hope starting again. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe some bridges could be fixed after all. I stood up, carrying the letter with me, as I went to find Betty. Whatever this envelope had inside, we'd handle it together. I walked back through the kitchen door, the envelope pressed against my chest like treasure. Betty sat in her favorite chair by the living room window, morning light catching the gray in her hair as she worked on her puzzle. Betty. My voice came out soft, like I was in church. She looked up, pen hanging in the air. Mike, you look like you've seen a ghost. Better than a ghost. I held up the envelope, my hand shaking a little. It's from Sarah today of all days. The puzzle pieces scattered as she stood up. Are you sure? Look at the handwriting. Those round letters. The way she dots her eyes. I brought the envelope closer, so she could see it. She remembered it's her graduation day. She's thinking about us. Betty put on her reading glasses, studying the address like she was solving a mystery. It just looked like hers, she said slowly after all these years of silence. Maybe she finally understood that family is the most important thing. The hope in my voice surprised me. Maybe Marcus's control isn't as strong as we thought. She reached for my other hand, squeezing softly. Oh, Mike, I've missed her so much. Her laugh, the way she used to call when she got good grades. Remember how happy she was when she made the dean's list before he turned her against us? The old anger tried to come up, but I pushed it down. Today was about Hope not being mad. But this letter changes everything. She wrote to us first. We stood there together, both looking at the envelope that might have our daughter's words of forgiveness inside. The living room felt full of possibilities, like the air before a big storm that washes everything clean. What do you think she says? Betty whispered. Maybe she's getting married. Wants to tell us about grandkids. My mind ran wild with ideas. Or she broke up with him, realized we were right about him stealing money. Or she just misses her dad. Betty's eyes filled with tears. 21 years old today, and part of her is still our little girl who used to crawl into bed with us during storms. I nodded, remembering graduation mornings filled with pancakes and torn gift paper when making Sarah happy was the easiest thing in the world. Before life got hard, before we lost each other in a mess of pride and hurt feelings. Whatever she says, we'll handle it together, Betty said, sitting on the couch next to me. I put my finger under the envelope flap, ready to tear it open and see what our daughter wanted to tell us. After 3 years of silence, the paper felt heavy, important, real. Here we go, I whispered, starting to lift the flap. Stop. Betty's loud voice made me freeze. My finger stopped halfway under the envelope flap. Betty's worried tone cutting through my excitement like a knife. Stop for what? She leaned closer, squinting at the address through her reading glasses. Let me look at that handwriting again. Betty, what's wrong? Something's not right. She took the envelope from my hands, holding it up to the window light. Look at how she wrote your name. See the slant? I looked at the letters more carefully, feeling worried. It looks fine to me. No, Mike. Sarah's writing always slants to the left. Always. 30 years of teaching school taught me to notice these things. Her finger traced the letters. This slants right. Maybe she's stressed. People's handwriting changes when they're upset. Not the basic slant. That's muscle memory. Betty held the envelope far away, then close. Again. And look at the pressure. Sarah writes heavy. She presses hard when she writes. These letters are too light. My chest got tight with a different kind of fear. You're seeing things. Am I? Look at this M in Mike. Sarah makes her M's like mountains with sharp points. This one is round like hills. She pointed to different letters. And she never ever makes her K's like that. Too curvy. Too fancy. Handwriting changes over time. Not this much. Not the basic letter shapes. Betty's voice had the sound of someone who'd spent years looking at student work. This person is trying to copy her style, but getting the details wrong. I wanted to argue to keep my tiny hope, but doubt crept in like cold water. The more I looked, the more the differences became clear. The space between words, the rhythm of the letters, even the way the pen had moved across the paper. It all felt wrong. But who would? I started, then stopped. I don't know. But this isn't from our daughter. The envelope suddenly felt heavy in my hands, not with promise, but with lies. Someone had tried to copy Sarah's handwriting, to use our pain to steal money. The meanness of it took my breath away. Maybe I'm wrong, Betty said softly, seeing how sad I looked. Maybe she learned to write differently. Or no. The word came out flat and dead. You're right. I can see it now. The careful hope I'd built over the past 10 minutes fell apart like a house made of cards. Someone's playing tricks on us. We sat quietly, the envelope lying between us, like proof of how foolish we were. Outside, kids were coming home from school, their laughter floating through the window, a sound that once would have reminded me of Sarah at that age. We have to open it, I said finally. We need to know what this is about. Betty nodded sadly. Whatever it is, it's not going to be good news. I tore open the envelope anyway, my hand steadier now that hope had died and been replaced by angry determination. If someone wanted to hurt us, I needed to know how and why. The paper made noise as I unfolded it, my hands moving like a robot now that hope had turned sour. Betty leaned against my shoulder, both of us looking at the single sheet of white paper. Dear Dad, I read out loud, my voice catching on the word that now felt like a lie. Read it all, Betty whispered. I cleared my throat and continued. I really need your help. I'm in the hospital and need emergency surgery that my insurance won't pay for. The doctors say I need $12,000 right now, or I might die. Oh my, Betty gasped. I know we haven't talked in years, but you're the only one I can ask. Please don't let our past fights stop you from saving your daughter's life. I need you to send the money to my digital wallet right away and wallet number. The random letters and numbers felt like gibberish in my mouth. I looked at Betty, whose face had gone white. Time is important, I continued reading. The surgery is tomorrow morning, and they won't do it without payment. I'm sorry it took something bad to reach out, but I'm scared. Please help me, Dad. Your loving daughter, Sarah. The letter fell from my hands, floating to the coffee table like a dead bird. That's not how she talks, Betty said right away. She never called you Dad in letters. Always Daddy or Mike. And digital wallet? I shook my head in disgust. Sarah studies computers. If she needed money, she'd use normal bank stuff, not some digital nonsense. I don't understand. She'd never be this formal with you either. Even when she was mad, her letters had personality. This sounds like it was written by a computer. I picked up the letter again, looking for any detail that might feel real. Nothing. No mention of her school, her life. No personal touches that would prove this came from my daughter. Just a fake cry designed to take money from a desperate father. Who does this? My voice cracked with anger. Who targets sad parents with fake letters from their children? Someone who knows about our situation. Betty's smart mind was working now past the first shock. They knew Sarah's name, our address, that we've been apart for exactly 3 years. But how could they know to copy her handwriting and send it on her graduation day? We stared at each other as the truth sank in. Someone had studied us, learned our family problems, made this lie specifically to hurt us where we were most weak. The violation felt almost physical. $12,000, I said, reading the amount again. They really thought we'd fall for this. You were ready to tear open that envelope with pure joy 5 minutes ago, Betty pointed out gently. If I hadn't noticed the handwriting, she didn't need to finish. I would have believed every word. Would have been calling banks and trying to figure out how to send digital money to save my daughter's life. The scammer had counted on my love, my guilt, my desperate need to make up. I need to call Sarah, I said, standing up fast. Right now, I need to make sure she's safe, that this isn't connected to something worse. Betty nodded seriously. And we need to find out who did this. I walked to the kitchen phone, my hands shaking with a different kind of energy now. Not hope, but anger. Someone had used my love for my daughter as a weapon, and I was going to find out. Who? The kitchen phone sat on the counter like an old friend. Black handle worn smooth from years of family talks. I grabbed it, my fingers automatically dialing the number I'd memorized 3 years ago, but never forgotten. Come on, Sarah. Pick up. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before her voicemail clicked on. That familiar voice, professional and distant now. Nothing like the warm daughter who used to call me every weekend. Sarah, it's your father. Please call me back as soon as possible. It's important. I hung up and immediately dialed again, walking across the kitchen floor while Betty watched from the doorway. Same result. Voicemail again. Sarah, this is urgent. Something's happened, and I need to talk to you right away. Please, sweetheart, call me back. The pet name slipped out before I could stop it. A leftover from when we still talked. When she still cared what her old man had to say. 3rd try. My hands were shaking now. Whether from anger or worry, I couldn't tell. Sarah, someone is using your name to try to scam us. They sent a fake letter asking for money, pretending to be you. I need to know if you're safe, and if this is connected to something bigger. Call me right away. I slammed the phone down harder than I meant to. She's not answering, I told Betty, though that was obvious. Maybe she's at graduation practice. It's 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. Or maybe he won't let her answer calls from numbers she recognizes. The thought made my chest tight. What if he screens all her calls, controls who she talks to? Betty stepped closer, her hand gentle on my shoulder. Mike, your blood pressure. You're getting worked up. Of course, I'm worked up. Someone is targeting our family, using our pain to steal money, and our daughter won't even take a phone call from her father. The words came out bitter. 3 years of frustration boiling over. What are you going to do? I looked at the fake letter still lying on the kitchen counter, proof of someone's cruelty and planning. The digital wallet address seemed to mock me with its random string of letters and numbers. So cold. So heartless. I'm driving over there. Mike, no. You know how that ended last time. This is different. I'm not going to lecture her about her boyfriend. I'm going to warn her that someone is using her name for fraud. I grabbed my car keys from the hook by the back door. She has a right to know someone is pretending to be her. What if she doesn't believe you? What if she thinks you made up the letter as an excuse to contact her? The possibilities stopped me cold. Sarah was smart enough to consider that angle, suspicious enough after 3 years of silence to question my motives. But the alternative was doing nothing while someone used her name for criminal purposes. Then I'll show her the letter. Let her see the handwriting that isn't hers. The digital scam. The fake medical emergency that doesn't match anything real about her life. I headed for the garage door. I can't just sit here knowing someone is targeting our family. Be careful, Mike. Remember what the doctor said about your heart. I paused at the door, one hand on the knob. My heart's been broken for 3 years, Betty. A little confrontation won't make it worse. The afternoon sun hit me as I backed out of the driveway. Betty's worried face visible in the front window. Traffic was light leaving town, but I knew it would get heavier as I got closer to the city. 30 minutes to the college. 30 minutes to figure out what I was going to say to the daughter who'd chosen her boyfriend over her family, who'd refused every attempt at making up, who might slam the door in my face the moment she saw me standing there. But someone was using her name to hurt us, and that crossed a line I couldn't ignore. The engine hummed steadily as I merged onto the highway, the college campus rising like modern buildings in the distance. Monday afternoon traffic moved at a good pace, giving me too much time to think. Someone had studied our family problems carefully enough to know about the separation, to time the letter for Sarah's graduation day, to forge her handwriting well enough to fool me at first. This wasn't some random scammer casting a wide net. This was targeted, personal, cruel. A delivery van slowed ahead of me, forcing everyone into the left lane. I drummed my fingers on the steering wheel, watching the lake stretch endlessly to the north. Gray clouds were building over the water, promising rain later. The anger that had fueled my decision to drive here began mixing with familiar doubt. What if Sarah really did refuse to see me? What if she accused me of harassment, of making up the letter as manipulation? 3 years of silence had created a gap that might be impossible to cross. But the alternative was worse, doing nothing while someone used our family pain for profit. Traffic thickened as I approached the college, the usual weekday congestion of students and faculty heading to afternoon classes. I took the campus exit, winding through streets that grew progressively more academic as I entered the university area. Sarah's dormitory represented everything she'd achieved without us. Academic success, independence, a life carefully built to exclude the parents who'd raised her. The buildings here cost more than I'd made in 5 years of engineering work. I'd driven these streets before during my failed attempts at reconciliation, memorizing the route to my daughter's door. The brick buildings and neat gardens spoke of young people who'd made it, who belonged to a different world than their working-class parents. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as I imagined the conversation ahead. Best-case scenario, Sarah would listen, understand the threat, maybe even thank me for warning her. Worst case, she'd see this as another attempt to interfere in her life, another reason to keep me at distance. What if she genuinely didn't know about the letter? That seemed most likely. Why would she be involved in scamming her own parents? But then, who was behind it? Marcus was the obvious suspect. But would he really stoop to forging his girlfriend's handwriting to steal from her family? The campus changed as I drove deeper into the college area. From busy academic streets to quieter dorm blocks, lined with students' cars and people walking between classes. These were Sarah's people now, her chosen community of smart college students, who probably never dealt with the kind of working-class struggles Betty and I had faced. I found a parking spot 1 block from her dorm building, feeding coins into the meter with slightly shaking hands. The walk would give me time to prepare, to figure out exactly how to present this situation without sounding accusatory or desperate. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows between the buildings, and I could hear the distant sounds of a campus celebration, students laughing in a nearby courtyard, normal Tuesday activities for people with normal family relationships. Sarah's dormitory came into view. For stories of red brick with white trim, a small garden filled with spring flowers. Clean, expensive, everything she'd worked for that we couldn't provide when she was growing up. Lights were on in the front windows. Someone was home. I stood at the bottom of her front steps, looking up at the blue door with its shiny knocker and security system panel. 3 years since I'd last stood here. 3 years since she'd chosen her boyfriend over her father's warnings. My finger hovered over the doorbell. The doorbell played a simple tune that echoed through the dorm building. Footsteps approached. Quick light steps I remembered from childhood. The security peephole darkened as someone looked through, then went light again. A pause, then the sound of locks turning. The door opened to reveal Sarah. Older now, but still unmistakably my daughter. Her dark hair was longer than I remembered, styled in a way that made her look more grown-up, more distant. She wore a college sweatshirt that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Dad. The word came out flat, neither welcoming nor hostile, just surprised. Hello, Sarah. We stared at each other across the threshold. 3 years of silence stretching between us like a physical barrier. She looked healthy, which relieved me more than I wanted to admit. No signs of the emergency surgery mentioned in the fake letter. What are you doing here? I need to ask you something important. I reached into my jacket pocket. Did you write this? I held out the letter, watching her eyes scan the familiar handwriting that wasn't quite hers. Her eyebrows came together as she read, real confusion replacing the guarded surprise. I didn't write this. She looked up at me sharply. Where did you get it? It came in today's mail, on your graduation day. Dad, I haven't written to you in 3 years. I didn't write this letter. Her voice carried truth, but also something else. Hurt that I would even ask, as if my question proved I didn't know her at all anymore. Then who did? Who would forge your handwriting to ask for money? You tell me. You're the one who brought it here. Sarah, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm trying to protect you. Someone used your name, your handwriting, your identity to try to scam $12,000 from your parents. The words came out sharper than I meant. That's convenient. Her tone shifted from confused to cold. You make up some letter as an excuse to show up at my dorm uninvited. Make up? The accusation hit me like a slap. Why would I do that? Because you've been trying to contact me for 3 years, and this was the only way left. Behind her, I caught sight of Marcus entering the hallway. He wore expensive casual clothes, the kind of weekend outfit that probably costs more than my car payment. His appearance wasn't accidental. He'd been listening. Sarah, who is it? He asked, though he obviously knew. My father. Apparently, someone's been writing fake letters for me asking for money. Marcus's face showed concern, but something flickered in his eyes, too quick for me to identify. That sounds like a scam. You should report it to the police, Mike. Maybe I will. I studied his face, looking for any sign that he recognized the letter. Strange coincidence, though. $12,000. That's about what someone might lose in a really bad week at the casino. Marcus's jaw tightened almost invisibly. I wouldn't know anything about that, wouldn't you? Dad, that's enough. Sarah stepped protectively closer to her boyfriend. You can't just show up here making accusations. I'm not making accusations. I'm asking questions. I looked between them, noting how Marcus's hand had moved to Sarah's shoulder. Possessive, controlling, someone targeted our family specifically. Someone who knew about our situation, your graduation day, your handwriting style. Anyone could find that information online these days, Marcus said dismissively. Could they? Could they find samples of Sarah's handwriting? Could they know she's been estranged from her parents for exactly 3 years? Dad, you need to leave. Sarah's voice carried finality. I didn't write that letter. I don't know who did, and I can't help you figure it out. Can't or won't both. She started to close the door. Don't come here again without calling first. I tried calling 3 times. You didn't answer. Then maybe take the hint. The door closed with a soft but definitive click, leaving me standing on the front step with more questions than answers. I'd accomplished nothing except confirming that Sarah genuinely didn't know about the letter, but Marcus's reaction bothered me. Too defensive, too eager to end the conversation. I walked slowly back to my car, the fake letter still in my pocket, feeling like I'd missed something important. The lock clicked behind me with such finality that I almost turned around to knock again. But Sarah had made her position clear. She didn't want to see me, didn't believe me, and thought I'd made up the letter as manipulation. Walking back to my car felt like moving through thick mud, each step heavier than the last. The golden evening light that had seemed hopeful during my drive here now felt mocking, lighting up my failure in harsh detail. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, watching Sarah's dorm building shrink in my rearview mirror. 3 years of hoping for reconciliation, and I had managed to make things worse. She probably thought I was getting desperate in my old age, creating elaborate schemes just to force contact. Traffic moved slowly on the highway, giving me too much time to replay the conversation. Something about Marcus's behavior bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. The way he'd appeared so quickly behind Sarah, like he'd been listening. The slight tenseness in his voice when he suggested reporting the letter to police. The protective way he'd stood, with his hand on her shoulder. Most telling was his reaction when I mentioned casino gambling. Just a flicker, barely noticeable. But I'd spent 40 years as an engineer learning to notice when something didn't fit properly. By the time I reached town, Instead of turning toward home, I found myself pulling into Miller's Park, the same place where I used to bring Sarah when she was small, where we'd feed ducks and talk about everything and nothing. The bench I chose overlooked the pond, now empty of ducks, but still peaceful in the fading light. I pulled out the fake letter again, studying it with fresh eyes. Betty had been right about the handwriting. Too many small details were wrong. But whoever wrote this knew enough about our family to target us specifically. $12,000, the exact amount someone might need to cover gambling debts accumulated over months of bad luck at the state casino. Someone who had access to samples of Sarah's handwriting, who knew about our estrangement, who understood exactly which emotional buttons to push, someone who lived in the same dorm as my daughter. The more I thought about it, the more Marcus's behavior made sense. His eagerness to end the conversation, his defensiveness when I mentioned casinos, the way he'd positioned himself between Sarah and me like a barrier. He wasn't protecting her from an unwelcome father. He was protecting himself from exposure. A cool breeze rustled the trees, carrying the first hint of spring's warmth. Change was coming, whether any of us wanted it or not. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in my pocket. Evidence not of Sarah's betrayal, but of someone else's desperation and manipulation. Someone who thought he could use our family's pain for his own financial salvation. The park was growing quiet as families gathered their children and headed home for dinner. Normal families who talked to each other, who didn't have years of silence to bridge, who didn't have to worry about fraud and manipulation, tearing them apart. But we weren't a normal family anymore. We were a broken one, held apart by someone who benefited from our separation. Someone who needed us to stay angry and distant because reconciliation would mean exposure. Standing up from the bench, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Not hope exactly, but determination. Marcus had made a mistake today. He'd shown his hand just enough for someone paying attention to notice. I walked back to my car, already planning what I'd tell Betty. We needed to wait and watch. If Marcus had written that letter, he'd probably made other mistakes, too. Desperate people usually did. The drive home took only 10 minutes, but it felt like emerging from a long, dark tunnel into light. For the first time since the separation, I had a target for my anger that wasn't my own daughter. For days passed like slow torture. Betty and I discussed the situation endlessly, analyzing every detail of my confrontation with Sarah, every suspicious reaction from Marcus. We decided to wait, to let things develop naturally rather than pushing harder and risk making everything worse. Friday evening arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that matched my mood. Betty was in the kitchen preparing dinner when the doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. "I'll get it," I called, expecting maybe a neighbor or package delivery. The last person I expected to see was my daughter standing on the front porch, soaking wet from the rain, clutching a backpack against her chest.
"Sarah."
"Dad, I need to talk to you." Her voice cracked slightly. "I found something awful." She looked like she'd been crying. Her usually perfect hair hung limp around her face, and her expensive clothes were wrinkled as if she'd thrown them on without care, but it was her eyes that stopped me cold. They held the same desperate clarity I'd seen in the mirror 3 years ago. "Come in, sweetheart. You're soaking." I stepped aside, watching her shake rain droplets from her jacket. Betty appeared in the hallway, took one look at Sarah's distressed state, and immediately shifted into maternal mode. "Oh, honey, what's wrong? Let me get you a towel." "I'm fine, Betty." Sarah opened the backpack with trembling hands. "Dad, look at these papers." I found them in Marcus's desk. She spread several sheets across the coffee table. Even from across the room, I could see what they were. Practice sheets filled with handwriting exercises. Row after row of attempts to copy familiar letter formations. "What am I looking at?" I asked, though my heart was already racing. "Practice sheets." He was trying to copy my handwriting. Her voice broke completely. "Dad, look at this one." She pointed to a sheet covered with attempts at writing her own name, her address, even what looked like draft versions of the fake letter I'd received. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. I found these yesterday when I was looking for our class schedules. They were hidden in a folder marked computer. Homework. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I confronted him about it last night. What did he say? At first he denied everything. Said they weren't his, that maybe someone planted them. She laughed bitterly. But when I pressed him, when I threatened to call you and ask if you'd really received a letter, he confessed. He broke down completely. Dad, he has gambling debts, serious ones. He's been going to the casino downtown 4 times a week for months. He owes money to people who aren't patient about collecting. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Marcus's nervousness during my visit, his eagerness to get rid of me, his defensive reaction to any mention of gambling. It all made perfect sense now. He targeted you because he knew about our estrangement, Sarah continued. He thought you'd be so desperate to hear from me that you'd send money without asking too many questions. How much does he owe? $28,000. The number fell between us like a stone. The letter asking for $12,000 was just the first payment. He planned to send more letters, different medical emergencies, until he got enough to cover his debts. I sat down heavily, the full scope of Marcus's manipulation finally clear. He hadn't just been a bad boyfriend. He'd been systematically using our family's pain for his own criminal purposes. Dad, I'm so sorry. Sarah's tears started flowing again. You were right about him 3 years ago. You tried to warn me, and I chose him over you. I let him convince me that you were trying to control my life when you were actually trying to protect me. Sweetheart, no. Let me finish. I should have listened to you. I should have seen the signs. You and Betty are the only people in the world who would never lie to me or hurt me. And I threw that away because a manipulator told me I should. Betty moved to sit beside her on the couch, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. The important thing is that you found out the truth. I'm filing for a restraining order, Sarah said firmly. Tomorrow I can't stay with someone who would try to steal money from my parents by pretending to be me. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her for the first time in 3 years, and saw not the defensive woman who'd shut me out, but the strong, intelligent person Betty and I had raised. She'd been manipulated and isolated, but she hadn't been broken. Can you forgive me? She whispered. I didn't trust my voice to answer, so I just held out my arms. She fell into them like she was 12 years old again. And for the first time in 3 years, my family was whole. Come on, both of you, Betty said, standing up and smoothing her apron. Let's sit down properly and talk about this over a meal. I was just making chicken soup. There's plenty for 3. We moved into the kitchen together, and I watched Betty automatically set a third place at our small table. The simple domesticity of the moment, plates and silverware, the smell of dinner, my daughter sitting in the chair she'd occupied as a child, felt like a miracle. I can't believe I let him isolate me from you for so long, Sarah said, accepting the bowl Betty placed before her. He was so sneaky about it, always finding reasons why I couldn't visit, why phone calls were inconvenient, why you two were trying to manipulate me. Professional manipulators are good at their work. I said, don't blame yourself for being deceived by an expert. But the signs were there. The secrecy about money, the way he controlled my schedule, how he always had an explanation for why my family was the problem. She pushed food around her bowl absently. He made me believe that choosing him meant proving my independence. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. The important thing is that you saw through it eventually. I should have seen through it 3 years ago when you tried to warn me. Should have, could have, would have. Betty's voice carried the practical wisdom of decades. None of that matters now. What matters is moving forward. I stood up and walked to the kitchen drawer where I kept matches. Speaking of moving forward, there's something we need to do. I pulled out the fake letter, now wrinkled from being carried around for days. This thing has caused enough damage to our family. Understanding immediately, Sarah nodded. We moved to the kitchen sink, all 3 of us crowding around the basin. I struck a match and held the flame to one corner of the letter. The paper caught, quickly, curling and blackening as it burned. Good riddance, Sarah whispered, watching the last traces of Marcus's deception wash down the drain. With the letter destroyed, Betty disappeared into the living room and returned carrying a thick photo album the one filled with pictures from Sarah's childhood. She opened it to a page showing a gap-toothed 8-year-old Sarah at a baseball game, grinning between her parents. "Remember this day?" Betty asked. "You insisted on getting cotton candy at every inning, and Dad kept buying it for me, even though I only ate half of each one." Sarah laughed, the first genuine laughter I'd heard from her in years. We spent the next hour looking through photos, remembering birthday parties and Christmas mornings, family vacations, and quiet Sunday afternoons. Each picture was proof that we'd been a loving family once, that the bonds between us were stronger than any manipulator could permanently break. "I've missed this so much," Sarah said, touching a picture of herself at 16, rolling her eyes at something I'd said. "I've missed having parents who actually cared about my well-being instead of what they could get from me." "You'll always have that," I said firmly. "No more years of silence. We stay in touch from now on, no matter what." "Never again," she promised. "And Dad, I want to write you a real letter next week when things settle down. A real letter in my real handwriting telling you everything I've wanted to say for 3 years." The contrast was perfect. From fake communication designed to steal money to genuine connection meant to rebuild love. It felt like the universe correcting itself. "What about Marcus?" Betty asked practically. "Where will you stay during the legal proceedings?" "I've already moved out," Sarah said. "I'm staying at a hotel for now, but I was hoping." She looked between us uncertainly. "Could I maybe stay in my old room for a few weeks, just until I find my own place?" "Sweetheart, this is your home," I said. "It always has been. We just lost you for a while." As we cleaned up the dinner dishes together, the three of us moving around the kitchen in comfortable synchronization, I marveled at how quickly the natural rhythms of family life reasserted themselves. It was as if the 3 years of separation had been a bad dream, dissolved by truth and honesty. Later, as Sarah settled into her old bedroom, I stood in the doorway, watching her organize her things. She looked younger. Somehow, freed from the weight of maintaining a relationship built on lies and manipulation. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said quietly. "Never," I replied. "Family doesn't give up. That's what makes it family." Outside, rain continued falling, washing the world clean for tomorrow. If you enjoyed this story from Vibes of Stories, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the suggested video.